One of the proactive measures that we do to prevent a sexual predator from claiming a victim on your campus is we educate staff and parents on what the common characteristics of a sexual predator are. There aren't any type of blood test, there isn't any type of blood test, there aren't any type of video cameras that can identify a sexual predator versus a normal person. But what we can do to be able to prevent that long-term person from being involved with our kid around our area, and again, not saying it's school staff, parent, doesn't matter who, really not that important. What's important is that we know what to look for, and then if seen, we know what to do and how to report it. These are the common characteristics of a sexual predator, and then after this we will get into a common characteristics of a sexual predator victim. I spent over 2 years interviewing over 35 registered sex offenders, 17 of which who were involved in school or school activities. And this list of common characteristics, again, is based on my research and the research that I've done through other professionals that are more versed in sexual predator characteristics than I am. But as a whole, the list that we got together, if a sexual predator demonstrates 4 or more of these characteristics that I'm about to read to you, there is a very good chance that they very well either are a person who has committed a sexual abuse or potentially will be a person that will commit an act of sexual abuse. Here are the characteristics to be able to look out for. 1. Engaging in repeated acts of physical contact with young children or adolescents. Example, tickling and roughhousing. The second characteristic, having that physical contact with individuals against their will excites them. If somebody is saying, stop tickling me, and they keep doing it over and over, that's an identified characteristic. Inflicting pain or humiliation on others reflects their non-empathetic nature. Characteristic 4, participating in or watching acts of physical aggression or violence on a regular basis and talking about it regularly. Number 5, taking zero precautions when undressing in public areas. They enjoy being seen. Number 6, secretly watching others who are undressing, unclothed, or engaging in sexual activities. A voyeurism, if you will, that cannot be satisfied if that person is not looking at something. This is where the online type of material comes into play for sexual predators, people that are chronic sexual abusers that have to see that sexual image. They need to do it on a regular basis, almost like a drug addict needs a drug. To them, they have to be satisfied with that image. So again, that idea of watching others undressing or seeing videos, something to stimulate them visually, is what we're talking about as a characteristic. Number 7, cognitive distortions when describing criminal acts. For example, a person that describes a rape by saying things such as, well, that girl was wearing a short skirt, she deserved it. When they have that cognitive distortion when describing criminal rape acts, displaying that empathy, that's another characteristic of a sexual predator. Someone that demonstrates social, interpersonal, and intimacy deficits, doesn't have effective communication skills, problems with intimate relationships, social isolation. They have a difficulty holding on to long-term relationships over and over and over and over again. They sometimes isolate. Now, again, these are characteristics. What we're going to get to next is some of the outgoing type characteristics that identify themselves, where once a person's identified or even being investigated, parents and staff members will say, there's no way that guy could have, or that lady could have never done this. They're so outgoing. They're so personal. That, again, is one of the extra characteristics we'll describe. Number 9, lack of victim empathy. We talked a little bit about that with the rape angle. They don't have empathy for anyone that's a victim. Poor coping or self-management skills, always late, unable to get simple tasks done, bills paid, things like that. They will either describe or talk freely about a history of maltreatment from their youth. Number 12, increased hostility that grows like grass. You can actually see them getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And it usually will be on a similar topic, but they don't have the ability to back themselves down. Emotional identification with children. Kind of self-explanatory, but you'll see that really tied in, and I saw it in one of the people identified who was a teacher, who the kids described as, she's just a great friend. She's my best friend. And it doesn't mean, again, that teachers that are friendly should be looked at as sexual predators. No way whatsoever. But when we talk to these children about this individual, they would say things like, well, we related really well. She just seemed like she was my age and going through my struggles. That type of discussion and that type of characteristic is what we're discussing. Number 14, preoccupied with sexual matters or activities. They constantly are discussing or talking or doing something that involves a sexual activity. Like if it's a man, constantly going to topless bars, talking about them constantly, discussing, never quite letting it go. Self-regulation problems, again, employment problems, impulsivity, substance abuse even. Volunteering, characteristic 16, volunteering for anything and everything involving children. Now, again, this is combined with some of these other characteristics. If you have a wonderful volunteer and somebody that's always wanting to do that, we praise those people. But again, making sure that that characteristic isn't combined with any of the others will help us prevent having a sexual predator in the environment that we're discussing and we're trying to prevent. And then finally, what makes sexual predators so difficult to notice, and what we discussed earlier, is one of the greatest identifiers of characteristics is they're extremely well liked and adamantly defended. That's the final characteristic of sexual predators. They have, that's a common characteristic. A lot of times they're very well liked. That's what makes them very good at hiding for so long in an area where people are, pretty well versed in looking for things that are danger to their children. So again, knowing these characteristics, knowing that a sexual predator, when approaching a young girl that they don't know, will say things like, "Hello, that's a nice dress." And if that young girl looks up and says, "Thank you very much, I appreciate that," that sexual predator will immediately move on from her as a target because she had some assurance. She had that ability to accurately describe, or really accurately talk for herself, but she had that self-awareness and that self-confidence, where if once a sexual predator makes that comment and that genuine, "You have a very pretty dress," if the potential victim drops their head and says thank you or just drops their head and looks away, that's an immediate target for a sexual predator with a history of abuse. Somebody that looks like they can't defend themselves, or is, in their minds, the way they justify this to individuals, especially young individuals, they justify them and describe them as non-human. These are some very difficult things to discuss. Obviously, the more we talk about these things, the more we know about them, the more we are looking out for them, the better chance that we can avoid ever experiencing them.